The Trump administration has tasked the American Technology Council and the Office of American Innovation with a couple of major goals. One is improving customer experience. Martha Doris explained that on Government Matters yesterday. Another major goal of the new administration is cost reduction and transparency and its possible impact on IT investment planning. Chris White is Chief Information Officer and Jeremy Wilcox is Managing Director of Federal Public Sector at ClearEdge Partners. Gentlemen, thanks both for coming on the program. Jeremy, before we get to the IT investment planning part of this, Jared Kushner, in speaking about the work that he's done with the federal government so far, talked about this very issue. Here's a highlight of what he said this week.
We created the White House Office of American Innovation in an effort to bring business sensibility to a government that for too long has relied on past practices as automatic justification for their continuation. Before I came to Washington, many warned me that the bureaucracy would resist any change that we tried to implement. So far, I have found exactly the opposite.
There's a lot there in what he's talking about and how he plans to move forward. What's your takeaway from those remarks and from the meeting this week?
Well, ultimately, I think that it's great that this administration is engaging with the leaders from all of the major technology firms out there. And ultimately, what we see in terms of best outcomes from technology investments, which I think are desperately needed in the government to modernize, is when you bring both parties together to create win-win scenarios where the government is putting skin in the game from an investment perspective, and technology innovation, the technology firms are bringing the best and the brightest to solve today's problems.
Chris, Kushner talked about modernizing government's technology infrastructure. I mentioned customer experience is a big part of that, bringing a business sensibility, a lot of these kinds of things. A lot of folks see cloud computing as the underlying infrastructure that will enable all of these other things that they want to do. What's your sense of how that fits with the things that the President and that Jared Kushner are talking about?
You know, the allure of cloud computing brings with it a lot of benefits, both in the public sector and in the private sector. What we see in our point of view would be that it's not just the what and the why, the key element is the how. And cloud computing represents one option to help, in many instances, accelerate modernization with the allure of it being more cost effective and helping to sort of untether some of the legacy life cycle that is part of the situation that both public and private organizations fall upon. It doesn't happen inexpensively, it doesn't happen quickly, and with an organization that is situated in key processes based on cost control and risk mitigation, using cloud provides a platform and a lever to help enable faster and more rapid transformation.
But to be fair, we're now 5-6 years into this process when cloud computing was first introduced as a possibility for federal agencies. What will it take to be the accelerator? Do you think, Jeremy, it'll take the administration to say, no, we're not going to do legacy at all anymore, or you're going to have to give us a really, really, really good business case to do it, or is there some other way to kind of move people in the direction that they need to go?
Sure. Yeah. I don't think it's saying we're not going to do legacy anymore, but I do think it's going to take a look. We're going to have to take a look at all of the different investments to see which ones can become cloud-enabled, move to the cloud, and modernized. And one of the key catalyst pieces of legislation is the Modernizing Government Technology Act, right, which passed the House, now sits in the Senate, and really needs to be enacted and passed and turned in and basically become law, so that federal CIOs can create essentially innovation funds, right, by looking across and using the rigor of, practices such as TCO and TBM from a methodology perspective to justify what is the ultimate business impact, what's the total cost if we do move this to the cloud and modernize. And ultimately, right, if you look at the Federal Agency Customer Experience Act, which was introduced in the Senate last month, what is the ultimate impact on citizens and customers?
Chris, I think the thing that is most striking about these discussions that are happening now is they're happening in a different way. Jeremy just used the term business practices. For a long time, both in public sector and private sector, that wasn't a piece of technology discussions at all, was it?
Correct. You're right, it's spot on. A lot of technology investments have been made for technical sake, and for capability's sake. And the perspective now with cloud computing, which is really consumption-based IT acquisition, it's all about the business case. So I think when we look at some of the legislation that's been passed and other position that's taken place, there is allure for the financing package that's available for it. We need to have a budget process that's confident enough to scale beyond 12-month installments, because where we see and where we really believe there's a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy of modernization, a lot of the government's ability to get maximum leverage with major IT suppliers, including cloud providers, is based on doing deals that usurp more than a 12-month cycle. So there's a means to the end that is, at a minimum, a zero-sum, if not a positive-sum game, where a lot of the major IT suppliers are very motivated to help. We need to equip the government agencies with the ability to optimize their leverage over multiple years.
Jeremy, we have about 30 seconds left. What are the things that you're seeing in the successful business cases that agencies are able to make?
Well, ultimately, I think what it is that people are looking at the status quo, and they're saying, hey, what is the private sector doing right now, in large enterprise organizations that we're not doing here in government? That, we're using the same technologies, we're looking at going to the cloud. What are the best practices, not just across government, but in the largest organizations globally as well as in the private sector? And let's take a look at those and see if we can adapt them for government and deploy them here.
Jeremy, Chris, thanks both very much for coming on.